Rightio, we're live, gentlemen and ladies. Good afternoon, and good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you happen to be in this live from Australia. Thank you all for coming along. I'll let Jay go through and yeah.
There we go, all fixed.
Right. Yeah, a flick of the mouse key. Okay. Tonight we're doing sharpening. Now, this could be spread over 2 or 3 weeks, depends on how far I get with it. I'm not sure if you can see me on the screen. I'll just put those two. There are earwigs for the night. Jay and Sid, the usual culprits. I'll just move into thing, but it's a little bit COVID coiffure still at the moment. But the best news today is that the barbers are open tomorrow. So it won't look like this next week. I'll be, yeah, I'm probably in the dark.
You're zoomed right in at that picture at the back. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, our barbers are finally allowed to open tomorrow. So I'll be back to my usual short trim sometime during the week, and you'll see what my face looks like underneath this fungus when I've finished.
Oh, God, no.
Okay. Jay, if you could go through who's in the chat, please, that'd be good.
All right, we've got Darren's come in. Tommy. Ricky. Philip. Soren. Mr. Stacey, sorry. I'll get correct that. Robert. Let's see. Paul. Pete. LP. LP's a new name. How you going, LP? And that's it so far, Robbo.
Yeah, as I said, good evening all. Now, the first thing about sharpening tools is that basically you need a grinder of sorts. Now, put simply, all it's got to do is spin a wheel around of the appropriate grit and you'll be able to sharpen a tool with it. Now, this is a picture that Mark Solwazy put up on the Woodturners of Australia forum or Facebook. As you can see, it's just a couple of V blocks with a shaft between it, 2 wheels on it, driven by a motor. Now, I've got a friend that's had that system now for 50 years. He still sharpens everything on it.
Leona's come in.
G'day, Leona. That was a good haul of timber that you got the other day. I saw that. Another way to do it, a really El Cheapo method, and I have a friend that does it this way as well. I've just got to make sure I get the camera in there. I'll have to zoom it back out a bit. It's to set up a grinder on the lathe itself, just using a drill chuck and a shaft. Now, the advantage of that is that you have you can set the wheel at whatever speed you like. So it's an infinitely variable speed grinder in a lot of ways, and it's dirt cheap. So, and you use the tool rest as a guide to do the thing, or as a friend of mine's done, he's actually built a platform that fits down into the pin so that he can use it that way. Now, as I've said before on previous lives, if you have a question, put in a series of question marks or put question in. G'day, Robert. Now, just change cameras. That's the one I want. Now, the first thing I generally do when I get a grinder, and I know if any club members have seen this demo, they've actually seen this before. The first thing I do is strip everything off it. I take the wheels off it to make sure that it spins nice and true with no vibration. With the advent of a lot of cheap grinders coming onto the market, I've seen two that have actually had bent shafts, and you can see it in the thing, they wobble up and down. And there's no way in the world that you'll get a grinder to do that, to work properly if that's the case. The next thing I do is these magnificent, they call them steady rests, but I just call them bent bits of metal, are absolutely useless. So they stay in the plastic bag. These plastic shields are these spark shields, but in a week's worth of grinding things, you can't see through them, so they're a waste of time. Now, in recent years, they've actually put a spark arrestor that goes across the top of the wheel to stop sparks coming back over the top of it. Yeah, that's probably a worthwhile thing, but the early grinders never had them on. This one never had one on it at all. And this one's over 40 years old. So I don't bother with that either. The next thing I do is put it on its back and take the 4 feet off it. Because if you're going to set up a jig on it, even the manufacturers of the jigs say, take the feet off, because these little rubber bits here allow it to wobble. And you can't get an accurate setting on your jig if the grinder's moving side to side like that. So once it's all stripped down. Sorry, what's that?
Dion has come in.
Oh, yeah. G'day, Dion. So that's our basic setup. The next thing I do is put it onto a decent plywood base so that I can clamp it down wherever I need it. My grinders generally stay within 4 or 5 steps of where I'm working so that I don't have to wander all around the workshop. I don't have what people refer to as a grinding station or a sharpening station because I work at different locations around the workshop all day, so I make sure that everything can move. Now, we just get on to another little subject here. We have high-speed grinders, slow-speed grinders, wet grinders, variable speed grinders, white wheels, grey wheels, CBN wheels, diamond wheels, blue max wheels. There's a plethora of choice. And I'll go through each of the wheels in a minute when I get there. So we've got our grinder. I'll just switch over to this camera here again in a second. Just got to zoom it in. Right. You'll have to forgive me for changing cameras and everything all the time because I'm used to doing this in front of a live audience, and normally I have 2 big tablefuls of stuff set out everywhere so that I can just sort of work along. But I'm a bit cramped for space because of the cameras. I need about 10 cameras set up to cover everything. So now that we've established that our grinder is running true, we can put the wheels on it. Now I'm going to talk a bit about grinding wheels here. When I eventually put this up, I'm going to put about a half dozen links or so underneath the YouTube video of things to look up. It's the history of how steel came about, how tool steel or high-speed steel came about, and various other things. There's a lot of reading. There's a lot of interesting things on the web about that. And now it's also, there'll be one there about how grinding wheels are actually made. And it makes it interesting reading. I always figured that if you know how something is made, then you know what it can do and what it can't do. Same as I'm not going to go through all the numbers on it. Now, I'll just go through the wheels a bit here. We started off with grey wheels. Most grinders up until 2 or 3 years ago always came with a grey wheel like this. It was standard silicon carbide wheel. The biggest difference is the bonding in them. The bonding is extremely hard. Now, you can sharpen tools on grey wheels, but you've got to be very, very careful that you don't overheat them, because the bonding in them is not friable and it doesn't break out like it on the white wheels do. Now, on the wheels themselves, there's a heap of little numbers. The most important one is down here, RPM. Never exceed the RPM of the wheel. Now, the RPM on the wheel refers to the speed of the grinder, not the circumferential speed around here. So always check that first. Like the Tormek, for instance, which I'll get onto later, is rated at about 140 or 150 revs. If you put a Tormek wheel on a high-speed grinder, you'd better run for cover, because they will shatter. The bonding in them is just not strong enough to take it. So always check the speeds of the wheels. We're fairly lucky in a lot of ways that the places that sell the wheels for wood turning always get it right anyway, so you can't go far wrong. Over on the other side, we generally have a whole heap of numbers here, the size of the wheel and again, the revolutions there. And then we have, sorry?
Pat's come in.
G'day, Pat. Now, on the other, we also have the grit, which is, in this case, is 120 grit, and a J or a K. Now, the J or a K refers to the bonding of the wheel itself. It's how friable it is. The higher the letter, the harder the, the higher the letter, the softer the wheel. And it's a funny thing, but the softer the wheel, the harder the steel it can grind. Like to grind tungsten carbide, you can get your thumbnail and run across the wheel like that and actually scratch it. They're what's called a green wheel. But if you use it to sharpen tungsten carbide, it hardly makes a mark in it. But put a high-speed steel tool on it and you'll leave furrows in it. It looks like a ploughed paddock. So always be aware of that. Now, this was the first, the grey wheel was the first, and then we had the white wheel, the aluminium oxide wheel that was made for grinding hot. That's grinding for grinding high-speed steel. The next one was this wheel here, which is called a Blue Max. It's made by Norton, and it's what's called an SG wheel, which is a seeded gel. It's a honeycomb construction. These are fairly dense in their bondings and everything. This one has got little gaps all the way through it. And if you read the thing on grinders and this and that, on wheels and this and that, they actually put cereal and that in while they're moulding the wheel. And when they fire it, that burns out and leaves little holes all the way through it so that they run a little bit cooler. So now, the next one up that came along was the CBN wheel.
Michael has come into the room.
Yeah, g'day, Michael.
And Leona said, this is brilliant.
Oh, geez, I haven't even finished yet. Now, CBN have been around since it was actually found in 1954, 57. Now, I only know this because I looked it up on the web today. And they've been used in industry since about 1960. But I actually priced the CBN wheel because I used to use one in a surface grinder that I had for doing heads, cylinder heads on cars. To make a wheel like that in the 1980s would cost in excess of $8,000. So that shows you how they've come down in price. And it's because I've worked out how to electroplate them. And that's the only difference. So they've been around a long time, but they've just never been affordable except for the last 10 or 12 years. Excuse me. Now, of course, we've got diamond wheels as well. Now, this is going to shock a lot of people. I'm going to upset a lot of people in those next 2 weeks, probably, because of my theories and what I say. Diamond wheels should never be used for sharpening high-speed steel on a high-speed grinder because there is a chemical reaction between the carbon in the diamond and the carbon in the high-speed steel, and eventually you will clog up a diamond wheel, or worse still, the diamond wheel will just shed its coatings. So a waste of time. They work they work all right on a Tormek because the Tormek is a slow-speed grinder. So the other thing is too that CBN likes working. Its best working speed is 2.5 to 3,500 revs. So really, you're defeating the purpose if you put a slow-speed grinder on it. Everything to do with sharpening is in these two things at the end of your arms, your hands, and the amount of pressure. It's just physics. You push hard, you're going to wear out steel and get it hot. So the idea is not to push it hard. The other thing that comes in grinding is your two eyes, because so that you can see the edge, which you can't see because you've got an edge. I'll get onto that a bit later on. Excuse me while I have a slurp on my cup of tea.
Hey, Tommy's loving it. He finds it very interesting as well. And Darren says you're killing it.
Yeah. Okay. Now, fitting up wheels. Wheels have to be fitted properly. The first thing you've got to do is do what's called a ring test on them. So what you do is suspend the wheel on a pin and knock it, and it should ring. Hope you can pick that up. And you do it in all 4 places. Turn it around and do it again. Now, if it does that, it's a sound wheel. If it does this, hear the clunk? That means that it's got a crack across it or a split in it somewhere. The only thing to do with that is if it's a new wheel, mark the box with a text the colour faulty and mark faulty on the wheel as well and take it back to where you bought it from. If it's an old wheel, and you should test every wheel. Yeah, right on. If it does it there, the best thing is to drop it on the floor and smash it. If it's an old wheel, because it's too easy to put one on if you're in a hurry. Not worth the risk. I've actually seen an 18-inch grinding wheel shatter, and it tore half a factory apart. Didn't kill anybody, fortunately. Right, question.
So Michael Smith's asked, been sharpening today on a CBN. Can you or do you have to clean a CBN wheel?
No.
And then Tommy's got a question straight after it.
Yeah, I'll see that as well. So I'll answer both of them at once. Right. Now, I'll answer Tommy's first, Michael. No, that speed should be all right. It's nearly in the parameters, so you're fairly right. This is for, those figures are more for if you're constantly grinding all the time, not just doing a chisel on it. If you were doing like a cast iron head or something like that, yes. Now, let's see. So 1,500 is all right. Been sharpening today on the CBN wheel. No, you cannot clean. Now, I'll rephrase that. Up until about a month ago, you could not clean a CBN wheel. I was talking to somebody the other day, I forget who it was, that said they now have a cleaner for CBN wheels. But CBN wheels should only be used for sharpening high-speed steel. Carbon steel will clog them up. And if you really want to ruin someone's day, put copper or aluminium on it, because you've got to throw the wheel after it. It just clogs it, you cannot get it out. you wear out the CBN before you actually get them clean. So I hope that's been answering everybody's questions there. Yeah, 1500 revs should be all right for the amount of grinding you're doing, Tommy. But again, as I said, only use high-speed steel on them. Never carbon steel. Carbon steel should be sharpened. Well, I shouldn't say never. But carbon steel is far better to be sharpened on aluminium oxide wheels or a grey wheel than what it is on a CBN. Right, that's the question. Yeah, rightio. Okay, so we've run it. We've determined that this wheel is cracked. And believe me, to try and crack a wheel in half is good fun without it shattering all over the place. This was the fourth one that I tried. This is a cheap Chinese one, so I wasn't too perturbed about it. Now, put that over the back. Now, we sharpen everything on an 80 grit wheel. Or actually, we sharpen pretty well a lot of things on our Blue Max wheel here, which, believe it or not, is 54 grit when they're dressed off. They go up to about 90 grit when they get a little bit, 90 or 100 grit when they get flattened off with a little bit of stuff on them. So that's what we sharpen on. In fact, most production turners sharpen on a 60 or an 80 grit wheel. They don't worry about anything.
Paul Robbo?
Paul Brinkley, where is it? It hasn't come up here yet, sorry.
You haven't mentioned carbide tools with a CBN.
No, yes I have. Oh, yeah, no, I haven't actually. Yeah, carbide tools should never be sharpened on a CBN wheel either. Tungsten carbide tools should be sharpened on a diamond wheel. So, right. Geez, I'll tell you what, this has gone strange. This I can't. Okay, right. Now, where am I up to? Blah, 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 blah. Right, yep. Okay. Now, it is important. Unfortunately, most wheels come with, where are they? Most grinders, particularly out of China, and the latest ones, come with thin washers like this. They're absolutely useless. They can bend and twist, particularly, I was watching a video the other day on a bloke doing a comparison between a cheap grinder and an expensive grinder basically in the same thing. I'll get onto the price of grinders in a minute, but he tightened it up with an impact gun, a rattle gun, and then wondered why it ran out of thingo. Probably for the simple reason he probably dished these washers in, and they don't hold when you do that. The right things to use. Hold on, I'll just get one. Got to take it off the other one. Right. The right ones to use is a nice thick one like that on the inside, and you can get away with a narrow one on the outside. Earlier grinders always had two thick washers on them, like this one down here. That had machined washers on it, like that. That's a 6-inch grinder. Now, just as an aside, the standard for grinders normally is that the 6-inch grinder has a 1/2-inch shaft and the 8-inch grinder has a 5/8 inch shaft. They're still measured in inches, not metric. Unfortunately, Ryobi and a few of the other manufacturers of grinders decided that they weren't going to stick with the standard sizes, and I've seen them with 14mm shafts one with a 17mm shaft, which was a big industrial thing, but that's beside the point. So you have to go and buy the wheels from them, which is a pain.
We got 28 watching at the moment, Robbo.
Thank you. Okay, so the thick washer always goes to the inside here. What I'll do is I'll just put this on the overhead camera for a minute. Put that down there. Hope I can get this. Come on, change your mongrel. Right, yes. Is that a better view, or would you prefer the end view?
Are you talking about the view that it was just on, just before?
Yeah, yeah.
What are you doing now? What are you going to explain?
I'm fitting up the wheels.
All right, no, leave it like that.
Okay.
Yep,
Now,
no, that's better.
the bore in the wheel is always greater than that. Now, they supply little shims like this, which are plastic ones, and you build them up until you get the actual shaft size here in the center. Or a better option is these solid plastic ones that do the same thing. Not going to slip out of there, you mongrel of it. But they build up as well like that until you actually build up the size that you want in the bore here. A far better way, because we're wood turners, is to make a wooden plug that goes in there, like that. The exact same mongrel is not going to fit into this one. I have to get the other wheel. It fits into there like that. It comes in exactly center when you put it on. Now, if you have a tame metal worker or a fitter and turner, he can actually turn you up a metal one, and they are the best of the lot. What you've got to make sure of is that it doesn't project out the side like this. I'll get it out. So it doesn't. It's got to fit about 1 or 2 millimeters inside the actual bore hole here, because it really doesn't do anything except center it onto the shaft here. So the next most important thing is these little paper bits here. They're called blotters. For those of us that are old and went to school and used to use dipping ink pens, nib pens, God, we had fun with those as kids. There's been many a child's bum pinned to the school seat with one of those. It's the same as that, a blotting. It's called a blotter. Now, the reason for the blotter is, g'day, Amy. Sorry to hear about your uncle or whatever. The reason for the blotter is that when these are moulded, if you run your finger around there, they're fairly rough. So what the blotter does is take out those uneven bits and gives a flat surface for the washers to sit onto. The other reason it's there for is it acts like a little bit of a shock absorber. When the wheel starts up, of course, it's stationary and there's a fair bit of weight in these. It allows it just to absorb the shock of it starting and twisting a bit. So, right, so we get our thing here now. Now, a thin washer on the outside like this is acceptable. You fit that on like so, get the nut. Now, only put it on finger tight. Don't tighten it up yet. And spin it. This one's running fairly true. It's going up and down a little bit. It's not too bad. Now, I'll just see if I can make it run out, because I want it to. No, I've got everything machined properly. Right. Sometimes you get a wobble from side to side. Now, if you do that, get a text of colour, and I have to switch over to the other camera for this. Get a text of colour and put an arrow on it, like so. Now, what you do is you put it up to the top, you loosen the nut off. Now, the nuts on grinders undo the direction of rotation. I don't know how many of people I've seen try and undo them on the left-hand side, the normal way, and end up squashing things. The other things with those washers is, that I forgot to mention, but I'll say it in a minute, is that they must be of even size so that you don't dish the wheel in and squash it. So you just loosen that off a bit, turn it around 180 degrees to there, tighten it back up again, just by hand. And now it runs, this one runs fairly true anyway. But you adjust it out like that. Now, I've seen on a lot of YouTube videos and things that they put little paper shims and things under here. To me, that is not a good idea because you're applying pressure in one particular part of the wheel. And as I said, those washers must be the same size. Where did I put those other steel ones? These two here. You'll notice they're exactly the same size. If you had a big one on the outside, what it's going to do...
Wrong camera, Robbo.
Oh, you're right. They're the same size. I'll just move up a bit closer. They're exactly the same size. Now, if you had a bigger one, pushing in over the top of that, it's going to break the wheel over the side of it. So always make sure that the washers here are the same size. Now, those machine washers, you can buy them at, in Australia, Machinery Warehouse, I know, or Heron Forbes, they have it. Probably Carbatech could get them in as well. So if you've got those tin plate washers on both sides of the wheel, at least buy a thick one for the inside, but make sure you get the right size for it. Right, so once we've got it trued up, now, just got to find the shifter again. Here it is. Hold the wheel and tighten the nut. Now, if it does spin on the other side there, you're in a bit of trouble. But you're not tightening up a wheel lug on a car, a wheel nut. It is just over finger tight, firmly is what we used to tell our apprentices when they were tightening things up like this. So just firmly. As I said, I watched the video the other day and a bloke got the ratchet gun onto it, or a rattle gun onto it. And what he did was loosen the nut on the other side, and he didn't have the brains to work out that he'd undone the nut because this wheel was spinning. When he turned this one just stayed stationary. Then as soon as he turned the grinder on, of course, with the nut going in the direction of rotation, it tightened it up. And he couldn't work out what was going wrong with it. And I thought, geez, and this bloke's putting videos up on YouTube. Okay, I've had my whinge for the day. Right. So we got that. Now, because it's running up and down a little bit, I'll just change cameras again so you can see it. This is what it... This one's not bad. It's almost running perfectly. Now, the way that you fix that is that you have to dress it. Now, dressing is critical in all the wheels. What you're not doing is you're not cleaning it. You're actually sharpening it when you dress it. Because what happens, I'll get the little wheel for this.
Antonio's in.
G'day, Antonio. How are you? Now, this is what I was talking about before about a steel insert. They just slip to the center of the wheel here like that. if the wheel looks like this, it needs dressing. It's got a groove in it. It's also covered in little bits of metal flakes. There was a post put up that the white wheels are self-cleaning. They're not self-cleaning at all. They still get clogged up. You end up with a black line down them and all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Generally, if you flick the wheel around and you see shiny bits in it, it means that there's metal embedded in there, so you've got to get rid of it. Now, the way we do that is we do what's called dressing it. Just hold on half a minute while I have a little bit of my cup of tea.
Stephen Hood has just come in.
Hey, Steve, how are you? I must mention somebody else too. He doesn't get in the chat, but apparently he sits in the background, and he will know who he is. I can't remember your name, I'm sorry, but you work with my wife, and I'm sorry I haven't replied to your email yet, but I've been a bit busy this week.
Got a question from Darren?
Yeah, I'll say that. Okay, Darren's asked, what's the ratio of oil to vinegar for the dressing of wheels? Yeah, well, I'd have to think about it.
He's taking Steve's place tonight, I think.
I think so, yeah. Okay. Now, it is important when you are dressing wheels that you wear safety glasses or a face shield. And technically, you should really be wearing a dust mask as well, because what you're doing is taking off bits of stone, so you can end up with silicosis if you're doing it all the time. A lot of the old blokes ended up with that from dressing down the big grinding wheels. So, and it's a strange thing, but the shape of the grinder normally is a pair of safety glasses to be put over it like that, and always there. You should always have safety glasses. Now, the other thing which this grinder does not have is shields over the wheels. Now, the shields are not meant to stop sparks from getting everywhere. What they should be called is called a scatter shield, because if one of these wheels breaks, you want to be thankful that that's there, because it will just go everywhere. The other thing that you never ever do on a wheel like this is dress the sides of it here to straighten it out. They are not meant to be ground on the side here. About the only useful thing you can do on the side of a wheel is sharpen a pencil with it. So they're rated for a radial load out this way, not a side load at all. Okay. Now, there's 3 or 4 different ways of dressing a wheel. I'll just go through them. A lot of the older people here that have been around workshops and things will recognise this as a star dresser. They are the noisiest things you could ever put near a wheel. They actually scream and howl. And they leave, if you're not careful, they leave little grooves across the wheel as well. All they are just rotating pieces of metal here, and they chop the old part of the wheel out. They were made mainly for the grey wheels, the carborundum wheels, to clean them up. The next thing is, where ain't gone to? Now, there's a thing called a devil's stick, which is a carborundum stick. It's about 1 inch square that you can use. I don't have one around at the moment, so, but they do a pretty good job too of cleaning up these aluminium oxide wheels. As I said, don't attempt to try and clean a CBN wheel. You just do more damage than you'll ever do with it. Now, diamond dressers come in Where has he gone to? Ah, here it is.
Darren has another question. I'm sure he is trying to replace Steve tonight.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to work out too. I'm thinking, do I want to say that, or do I just want to leave that?
He's dragged one of them. I don't know. I can't remember what that refers to. Okay.
Drag queens.
Now, right. There's a round one like this, but unless you have very, very, very steady hands, it is near impossible to clean that wheel dead across in a straight line, which is what you want. There is a jigger that I use. I couldn't get my normal dressers. If I can find that, I'll be going well. Sorry about this.
So Pete has a question, Robbo.
Yep.
Have you ever used silicon instant gasket on the thread to secure the nut without over tightening?
No, I've never had a nut on a grinder come loose, because the only reason that I have seen them come loose is because they weren't tightened in the first place. And what people have done have started up, suddenly realised that the nut's loose, switch it off, and of course the inertia of the wheel just keeps it spinning around, and it undoes the nut, and suddenly you've got a grinding wheel running off across the floor, which is not very pretty.
You got a couple of follow-up questions there too, Robbo.
Yep.
So Justin's got
Okay, right. I'll ask. I've just bought a Vicmark CBN and bushing. Do I still need to use the thick washers before the nut? No. I'll get on to fitting the CBN wheel in a minute, Justin. What is the thing that looks like a hammer? This one. Is that the one you mean, Darren? Sorry, Ricky?
I think you might be talking about the diamond dresser that you're about to get to, Robbo.
Oh, yeah, right. No, that's called a star dresser. Like I said, noisy as sin, and generally leaves lines across the thing. Now, in order to keep a straight line on it, all I did was get a piece of aluminium, drill a hole that allows the dressing thing to go in there, and put a bolt through it so that it holds on, and hopefully you can pick it up in there. Yeah, it sits on the edge of the rest. Ah, come on. It sits on the edge of the rest like that. You tighten the bolt down and you just slide it backwards and forwards. That ensures that it's parallel with this back edge on the rest here. I hope that's coming up in the camera, is it?
Yep, can just see it, Robbo.
Right, yep. Now, the one that I think that Rick is referring to is this one here. This is called a diamond T dresser, and it is the best thing to use on a wheel. They're only about $20, $22 or something, and you can sit it on the rest, and it'll cover the whole width of the wheel. Now, the width of the wheels is another thing. People say, oh, you've got to have a 40 mil wide wheel. Well, no, not really, because in a lot of cases you're only sharpening on the thing, but a 1 inch or a 3/4 inch wheel is definitely more desirable than one that's only this wide here, which is a narrow wheel, which is why it's never been used. It's only for demonstration purposes. Sorry?
Mark is in. Oh,
yeah, right. So the wider wheels are great, particularly if you're doing swept back drawings on bowls and bowl gouges and things like that, because you've got the whole width of the wheel. The problem with most jigs is that you're only sharpening right in the centre of the wheel. Now, I won't get on the jigs or anything tonight, so I just want to get all this wheel part through first. So
we did have a question from Dion up there, Robbo.
Yep.
Is there a recommended grinding wheel for beginners, brand and size?
For what? Sorry.
Is there a recommended grinding wheel for beginners, a brand and a size?
No. Now, that's an interesting point. Just hold on a second, and I'll just explain something here. I'm going to swing this camera around for a minute. Not the one I'm working on, but this one. And I'll zoom him in a bit. The question gets asked, should I buy a 6-inch or an 8-inch grinder? My question back to most people is, have you got a grinder? Yes, I have a grinder. What size is it? 6-inch. Okay, 6-inch is fantastic. Don't worry about buying another 8-inch one. Here is the bevel on a tool. Now, this, if you use a grinder, you always end up with a hollow grind, it's called, which is like that. Can you see that in the thing all right?
Yep. Yep.
Right. The difference, if you drew a straight line across here, and this was 8 millimeters long, from there to there, the difference in the angle here is 2 thou on the concavity. So a 6-inch wheel will do as well as what an 8-inch grinder will. If you happen to have a 6-inch grinder, keep your 8-inch grinder. Keep your 6-inch grinder, particularly if you're on a tight budget. I do get annoyed with people going out and buying something that they don't need when what they've got is absolutely sufficient. So if you're just starting off, my recommendation is an 80 grit wheel, an aluminium oxide 80 grit wheel, with whatever size grinder you happen to have. They'll cost about, I think they're about $30 or $40 at Carbotech, CWS, any of the wood turning supply places. They're relatively cheap, and if you learn to grind with them first, whoops, don't know where I am with that camera, so I'll just leave it off for the moment. I know that's going to get me into a lot of trouble with a lot of people, but that's unfortunate. The ramblings of a bloke that's been doing it for 45 odd years. So, as I said, production turners only use an 80 grit wheel, and we generally 99% of the time freehand, and I'll do that later on. Right, now, fitting CBN wheels. Discard everything. You should be able to discard everything anyway. Now, I cannot get the bush out of this CBN wheel, but they generally come with a bush in the centre here. Now, it's, for want of a better word, it's shaped like a mushroom. So this side is the same size as what the diameter is. It slips through the pilot hole here, and it's about 0.5 to 1 mil underneath this section here. That is, so I'll tell you a funny story that doesn't involve Neil this time. A friend of mine rang up and said, "Oh, I'm having trouble with my CBN wheel." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "It just spins. It's not rotating." What he'd done was he'd gone back to front, and he had this part here on the outside, and it locked up against the shaft. Consequently, it wasn't pinching against itself. Now, sometimes on some grinders, the shaft is too long out here. then sometimes it pays just to put one of the washers back in there, but make sure that you face it away like that, so that it's bearing down on the centre here, not on the outside part here. That's all it is, and it should be supplied to the CBN wheel, is a washer like that, a plain flat washer, and put it on, the nut on. Now these are a little bit more, you do them just a fraction tighter than firm. And that's got it in. And CBN wheels should run perfect. In fact, if you have a look, they've got balance marks in them, which is where they've drilled them to make sure they're perfectly balanced. I haven't ever met a CBN wheel that's not balanced or doesn't run perfectly balanced. I have heard of people who buy some of the cheaper CBN wheels and they are out of balance and shake hell out of the grinder. In a case like that, you return it back to the manufacturer and say, I want another one, please. Now, these wheels are D-way wheels. This CBN wheel is a D-way wheel from America. Nobody in Australia had them when I bought that back in 2011. So this wheel celebrated its 9th birthday 4 days ago. So that's how long it's lasted. Now, bear in mind that sometimes we are sharpening every 17 to 30 seconds on some of the hard stuff. So it's done damn well. It's getting a bit fine in the tooth now. It was an 80 grit, but it's probably up around about 120, I'd say now. I would never go above a 180 grit CBN wheel. There's no need for them. Now, the biggest problem with a CBN wheel is that there are no sparks off very few sparks off a CBN wheel. So it is very, very hard to check your spark line over the edge of the wheel. Now, I haven't got onto the Sorby Pro Edge yet, but I will in a minute. So, right, now that's how you set up a grinder. Is there any questions so far? No, you're dead right, Justin. We do not stop the grinders. Once they start, they run. And just on that small point, these are Abbott and Ashby grinders, which are, well, that one is made in Australia. This one's made in China because I only got this one a couple of years, 4 years ago or so. But a good quality grinder for starters, and they're the full quid. It doesn't matter what horsepower rating you have on a grinder. As I said earlier, it's only got to rotate the wheel. So even a 1/3 horsepower, as long as it can get the wheel up to speed, you're right. The biggest thing with CBN wheels is the weight. You've got to have a fairly powerful grinder in order to start them up. And I've seen they've put them on some grinders where the weight has just been too much and they sit there and hum because they can't get it up to speed to get it going. So,
Robbo, we have a question from Dion.
Yep, I'll get there in a second. That's the only criteria as far as horsepower and that goes for it. Right, Dion.
I think Justin might have answered it.
Right. What does CBN stand for? Cubic boride nitride.
No, we've got controversy in the chat already, Robbo. Mark mentioned the Sorby.
Right. Yep. Okay. Now the Sorby Pro Edge is like a belt sander. I had one for 6 to 8 weeks, and to be quite honest, I hated it. It cost me a fortune for belts, but as I said before, we're sharpening every 17 seconds sometimes on some of our harder timbers. and it was just uneconomical for me to have it. The other problem that I had was that it put a flat bevel on the tool. Now, I have to say I don't know whether it's me because of the way that I was taught, and it's a personal preference. I prefer a hollow grind because I found, particularly on skew chisels with a flat grind, it was either in or out as far as starting the cut goes. You didn't have the little bevel. You didn't have the little bevel behind at the heel of the bevel, at least, to be able to rock it over. It was just in or out. I have the same trouble with another kind of grind, which is by the Egyptian chap, Ally Avicera. He has a concave grind on his tools for the same reason. You can't judge where this cutting edge is going to be. And to try and roll a bead with it, I just found it with Ally Avicera's chisel, I found it near impossible because it kept coming out of the cut all the time. Now, I know a lot of people love their Pro Edge. I don't. And that's, like I say, I don't know whether it's because of the way I was taught or not, but I know that 3 or 4 of my friends also bought Pro Edges and have since on sold them. A, for the cost of the belts, and B.
Well, I love my Pro Edge, Robbo.
Yeah, I know you do, Sid. So, like I say, it's probably just me. No, there's no need to do that, Mark.
I got your back, Mark.
Yeah, look, a lot of things come down to personal preference in wood turning, and that's just one of my things. That's all. Is that I couldn't stand a flat bevel because I just found it hard to work. Plus, it was very, very hard to even hone, and I generally don't hone any of my chisels. I would only hone a skew chisel if I'm too lazy to go to the grinder. My chisels come straight off the grinder and I start using them. I find no advantage in honing a chisel. But I can understand why people do it. And I think it boils back, it's like the woman who was cooking the leg of lamb and her husband's watching her and she cut the shank off. And he said, "Why do you cut the shank off?" She said, "My mother did it." So he goes around to mother-in-law. He says, "Listen, Ma," he said, "why did you cut the shank off?" "Well, I don't know. My mother did it." So he goes to the nursing home and gets Granny. "Granny, why did you cut the shank off the leg of lamb?" "Because it wouldn't fit in the bloody oven." So things become habits and you just follow suit. Now, I think a lot of people these days hone is because the old blokes used to do it. Now, the reason the old blokes used to do it was because there were 40 or 50 of them working in a factory. There was only one grinder. They used to have to sharpen their tools before they started for the day, and they were being paid per item. So to leave the lathe and walk all the way down a big building to go and sharpen the tool, could you imagine 40 blokes sharpening tools every 30 seconds? Whoa, geez, there'd be a queue a mile long. So it was easier and quicker for them to hone them. But stones, our grinding wheels and our stones and everything have progressed a lot in the last 50 years too. And I think that's a big part of it. So, as I said, I do not bother honing my tools except in special circumstances.
You're up to 33 watching, Robbo?
Yeah, quite agree, Justin. The hollow grind has 2 points of contact when honing. A flat grind has only one, and it's hard work. I don't teach. I don't.
Rob CP's just coming.
Sorry. Oh yeah, I'll say that, Rob. Good day, Rob. Yeah. Mark, what on? Yeah, That's right, on your knife grinds and things like that. Stones on a knife, yes. It's the same on carving tools. Now, there's a distinct difference between a carving tool and a turning chisel. For starters, with a turning tool, you're covering about 3 miles in a minute. Whereas with a carving tool, if you covered 3 miles in a minute, geez, the thing would be smoking. Yeah, you never use the code, never. Now, I'm going to call it a night shortly because next week I will do the sharpening and the shaping of the tools and everything, and I'll have to reset all this part here. Oh, I haven't talked about the Tormek yet. Now, I've had to go and upset Mark about his Pro Edge, so I might as well upset the Tormek owners now too.
Get the whole suite, Robbo. That's the go.
Yeah. Tormek's fantastic sharpening system, but with this proviso, for wood turners, they really are too slow. And you, unless you're a masochist and you really, really love sharpening, then to shape a tool on a Tormek is exercise in futility. We decided to try and do it one day.
And
What?
to be fair, Sid, there's no argument. It's only you and one other person here that like the Sorby dude. So everyone else is against you. There's no argument. You lose straight out.
No, look, it's the same as it's personal preference, as I said. Now, the Tormek, if you are a woodworker, and I mean that you do carving and you've got a lot of hand chisels and things like that, the Tormek is absolutely fabulous because of the jigging system. They do make the best jigs on the market, and I'll get onto that next week. But as far as sharpening for wood turners, it is just, as I said, just too slow. And it is an exercise in frustration if you've got to sharpen it. Now, what you've got to remember is that every tool you buy, no matter what they say, is not sharpened. And 9 times out of 10, they definitely are not shaped the way that you want them. So you've got to sharpen and shape them anyway, straight off. Now, yeah, you're dead right, Pat. That's why you sharpen on and you shape on a high-speed grinder. Right. Tormek for sharpening, not shaping. Yes, I quite agree. But I just find they're just too slow for me to sharpen. Like, we generally have 4 or 5 chisels of the same type, like I mean roughing gouges, this and that, lined up. I sharpen them all at the start. And then when I had girls working here for me, they used to be able to sharpen them because of jigs. That's the only reason I got jigs, but I'll get onto that next week. I do love the leather honing things on the Tormek. They're absolutely fantastic for doing the insides of flutes and things like that. But Michael, you've aligned yourself with the enemy, I see.
Robbo, in all fairness, I would like to make a comment in defence of the Pro Edge. For someone who's not sharpening all the time, it is very easy to set up and it's very easy to get good repeated grinds.
That is true, and I'll cover that next week. That's why you use jigs. But the Pro Edge actually uses the jig from Tormek. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just finishing my cup of tea, and having a slurp there. Now, I was going to say something else. I've forgotten what it was now. Can't have been important.
So Dion's got a comment you might want to have a look at, Robbo.
Well, that's the challenge. I have no idea what the shape should be. Now, that is a fair comment, because that is the biggest thing that all learners and beginners face. If you gave 15 chisels to 10 wood turners and locked them in a room and said, hey, shape and sharpen this, you'd come out with 25 different chisel shapes. So knowing what works for you is the best. You've got to have a baseline to start with, and that's what I hope to be able to give you next week, is a baseline of what I use so that you can at least get the shape into it. Then you can start experimenting with it yourself. And I run 45 degrees on all my tools. It goes pretty well contrary to what a lot of people say, that you should have 60 on this and 55 on that. Bugger that. 45 is easy, and I'll show you why next week. I came up with that figure there. And believe it or not, it doesn't matter whether you put a 30 degree, a 60 degree, 45 degrees or 40 on it, provided you have a sharp edge, it is going to cut. It has no option. The only thing that differs is where you have to put the handle. Yet, in your case, Darren, the Tormek would be fantastic for sharpening knives. There is not much better. Tommy, you're better off 45 on your spindle roughing gouge. Yeah, that is the hardest part of turning, Michael, particularly if you're not in a club or anything like that. And even being in a club, you'll get 10 different answers from 14 different blokes about what you should be doing.
Colin's in.
You're late, Colin.
Oh, Sid yelled it for some reason. He must be excited. Colin's just come in.
Yeah, I know. What I said, he's late. We well and truly beat you tonight, Colin. Yeah. Yeah, that's a little... It depends on how you're measuring it, Rob. Whether you're measuring from the flute back or from the base back up the bevel grind. But try 45 degrees and you'll be astounded at the difference, actually. 30 degrees, in my opinion, is just too late, too blunt. Yeah, Arkansas stones are good. Well, somebody was talking the other night on one of the lives that his neighbour came in to check on him because he was talking to him. He thought that they were talking to themselves. Okay, any questions about anything, about grinders, wheels, setting them up? Yeah, I worry about some of you English blokes, I tell you. Pete just touched my Pro Edge. I felt on it. Not sure how the Pro Edge felt about it, though. Yeah, as I said, I'll put up the links underneath this one. It might take me a couple of days at the moment. What do you mean, Leona? Replace the actual grinding wheel or the stropping wheel on the side? No, right. That's a good question, Justin, and one I should have covered, which I didn't. The advantage of the CBN is that you need no scatter shields or anything around them. There's a lot of advantages to a CBN wheel, actually. They don't reduce in diameter, which is handy if you're using jigs because you can just leave them where they are most of the time. I'll get on to you in a minute, Colin. But you don't need any safety guard around it because they're a solid steel or a solid aluminium machined bit. So the likelihood of them ever flying apart is virtually nil. Right, now, question. I've got a cheap grinder. Would it be better to change the wheels? Yes. Cheap grinders work good with the right wheels on them, believe it or not.
So Leona's got back there, Robbo, to replace the strop.
Wait on. Replace. No, not really. It actually, yeah, I suppose you could. Wait on, I'll just find out, Leona. Wait on. It's a long time since I had it apart, actually, so just got to remember what the axle looks like. No, you can't. There's not enough protrusion on the axle to fit anything onto it. So it'd sort of be an exercise in futility, Leona, because the drive wheel is in underneath that thing. I don't might be able to pick it up there. Right, yeah. Just wait a second. I'll change cameras and I'll just show you. Oh, come on, change. Not that one. That one. Right, now, you'll have to answer, Sid, because I'm down the other end of the shed. You're talking about this one here, are you, Leona, the big one? That one?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that's what she was talking about.
Right. Yeah, well, as you can see, there's only a quarter of an inch of actual sticking out from there, so you really can't mount anything on it. And because the unit drives off this wheel here, the motor's down underneath here with a shaft on it that sits on that wheel there. And just as a little aside, if you find your Tormex slipping when you're trying to sharpen tools, because you have to put a bit of pressure on them sometimes, get a bit of 80 grit paper and clean this wheel off here. They get stuff built up on them and it loses its adhesion to the little axle thing down underneath there. So, and whenever you're putting this outer cover back on, I hope that's got it, yeah, this one with the stropping thing on it, always make sure that it's seated into the 3 holes of the drive thing. I've seen a lot of these smashed and the drive wheel smashed because I didn't locate the little holes that the lugs fit into. And as soon as you do that and tighten it up, it's like putting 2 uneven washers on the grinding wheel. You actually smash the wheel behind it.
Colin had a question a little bit earlier. He's got a cheap grinding wheel. Would it be better to change the wheels?
Yes, I answered him. I said, yes, it is.
All right. And
it's only got to spin wheels, so that's fine.
And Rob CP's asked, he's got, I have an oval skew and I don't have the skill. I don't have the skill to sharpen on my grinder. Do you think it is good to sharpen on a flat diamond stone or a normal wood chisel?
Like a normal wood chisel, yeah.
Wood chisel, sorry.
There's a knack. That is the reason I hate ovals. One of the reasons why I hate oval screws. There's numerous reasons, and because this is a public broadcast, I can't really say what I think about oval skews. It was the best con of the wood turning public by a marketing place I've ever met. But anyway, right, they are best sharpened really in a jig. And I see that Mark's put a thing in there, and I must admit I've never thought of that. Put a blob of blue tack under the skew, then place on the table. Keep your thumb on the thing. Yeah. Tommy knows about oval skews. Sorry, Dion asked a question about 80 grit. Sorry, Dion, where was it? Now, so this is the other thing, Mark. Like, you love your oval skew. I know a lot of people that love their oval skews. They don't use a skew as much as I do for the sort of work that I do. And if you've ever watched any of my other lives, you'll notice that I do a lot of V cutting with it. Now, the biggest problem with an oval skew is properly sharpened. There is very, very little bevel behind the long point, and it is very, very easy to get a catch with it. Yes, you can just get away with an 80 grit wheel, Dale. Thanks, Justin. And to answer your question on the board the other day, Justin, yeah, well, you can see on my grinder that I've got a CBL on one side and a Blue Max on the other side. God, you must be feeling very privileged, Mark. I'd be worried about what else he was touching too.
I was just wondering whether this is all too much information.
Yeah. Yes, you can just look. If your budget is tight, Rick, an 80 grit wheel is all you really need for doing most of your work. As I said, every production turner that I know, and I know a hell of a lot of them, just use an 80 grit wheel. Now, whether it's pink, blue, green, whatever, the only reason they're different colours is it's not in the abrasive. It's not in the abrasive. It's actually in the bonding of the wheel, and it's sort of just to identify the manufacturer more than anything else. Oh, that's going too far, Pete. Touching his new cryo tools.
Oh dear.
You weren't a copper in the last in the last life, were you, Mark?
Might need to raise the tone again now.
Do you need to go into timeout, Mark?
Just remember though, Joe, he'll be able to get you back in a different one if you do that.
I just won't say anything. I'll pretend I'll just stay in mute mode, you know.
Lurk in the background.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
And tell me, Leona, where's my nemesis tonight, Steve, sleeping in.
No, Robbo, he works 1 week and then has a week off. So maybe it's his work week.
All right, see you later, Leona.
Maybe that's Steve under Leona's account.
No, it's Leona.
No, he wouldn't have been able to control himself.
Yeah, and thank you very much for the compliment.
Bye, Leona.
Oh, he's very sick. Oh, that's right. He's in hospital, isn't he? He's having an operation on something, yeah. No, sorry.
Thanks for coming in, Leona.
Something I missed there. Moment. Oh, can't find it, so. Yeah, the colour, that's what I was going to say. The colour really doesn't matter. In most cases, like you can get what's called ruby wheels. Now, whether or not they use rubies in the thing, now.
Yeah, Justin just beat me to it. It was Pat Keefe asking what your opinion on Tormek CBN combo.
Yeah, that's Pat. That's a question of Pat. I'll let Pat answer it, and then I'll answer.
No, Pat asked the question.
Oh, sorry.
That's one. Yeah. I just went to see which one we'd missed.
Right. Okay. Well, as you've probably seen on the camera, I've gone back to my black stone. Now, yeah, you're right, Darren. It probably would be garnet anyway for that colour. I've gone back to my stone. I had a CBN wheel on this. I wore it out rapidly. I don't now. As I said, we sharpen a lot. So whether it was because I over sharpened or not on it, I have no idea, but I don't think so. But it didn't seem to work as well as what the stone one did. Now, I also got a diamond wheel. And at the risk of really offending a lot of people, I found the diamond wheel absolutely useless. So maybe, yeah, that'll be
Robocops.
That'll be next week, Rob. The question is, maybe you don't have to answer now. Actually, maybe discuss it in a future lesson. What are the advantages of hollow grinds to flat grinds to bellied out grinds? Well, we did discuss it a bit earlier on, but I'll be covering that next week when I actually start sharpening some chisels. Yes, the black wheel on the silicon carbide wheel. Sorry. I find that works better on a lot of the M42 steels that I use, and it can also do the it'll also yeah, I'll do that, Justin. Just remind me during the week or next week when I come back on again. Yeah, good night, Antonio. Thank you for coming in.
Did you see what Soren said?
Yeah, that's what I was answering about the black wheel on the Tormek. Yes, silicon carbide wheel I use, not the grey one, not the original wheel, but the silicon carbide one. It works better on the higher grade steels, like on cryos and that.
Justin's got some extra homework for you.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, that's why I said to him, just remind me during the week sometime or next week. Well, with daylight savings, we've still got an hour or so we can yak if we want to.
How about you put your mug? How about you put your mug on the screen instead of the grinder?
Oh, why?
Well, come on, don't be like that.
Because in all honesty, I'm enjoying a quiet cigarette.
Is the host a grinder?
Yes. Well, he's better looking than I am.
He's pretty hard, eh?
Yeah.
He doesn't take any shit. He's a spinner, that guy.
Oh.
Oh, look at that. What a shame. None of them are pointing at you. How you going, Mike?
They are now.
Mike, Midnight
Besides
Joker.
which I'm... yeah. G'day, Mike. How are you? I'll just zoom it back a bit too. Always managed to go the wrong way on this thing. No sanding here. What was that in reference to, Justin? Sorry, I missed that while I was mucking around with cameras.
When Mike came in, I said he was just inside for the sanding, referencing almost finished.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, sorry, I'm looking down at the screen there, all right? Yeah, I think they are on special at the moment, sorry, I'm not sure. But what you've got to be careful of, Soren, if you get a black wheel, is they tend to glaze up pretty quickly. So you seem to be dressing them a little bit more each time, but you only take just a light skim off them anyway, and that's all you really need to do. Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there, Pete. I very rarely put micro bevels on any of mine, but micro bevels are mainly made for people that turn bowls all the time, and I'm a spindle turner most of the time. But I also turn bowls differently than a lot of other people. Well, LP, it's I've been doing it for over 40 years, and I'm still learning. I think the day you stop learning is the day you should give something away.
So LP is Lee, Robbo?
Sorry, he's leaving, is he?
Lee is his name.
Oh, Lee. Okay, Lee. I'll have something to say about the bottom feeder next week, Justin.
That doesn't sound like it's going to be good.
No, there's an interesting story attached to the bottom feeder.
Does it involve Neil?
No, at this time. I must admit, I really see no use on why a micro bevel on the spindle gouges would be any advantages. Yeah, I've had a few students with tools like that, Mike, with more facets and micro bevels than Oak Diamond, I tell you.
Yeah.
No,
Well
not
done,
about
Amy.
catfish, Amy. I'll tell you what, Darren, playing around with these cameras and the lives and everything, God, I've had a major boost in the education as far as technology goes, I tell you. Yeah, I must admit I'm a technological dinosaur. I'd turn the switch on and hope that it works. If it doesn't work, I'm in trouble.
So how have you enjoyed your new earpiece headphones tonight, Robbo?
Oh, I mean, look, fantastic. And it's so great just being able to walk around without having to fall over leads or be aware of leads and things. It's just giving me freedom. So, and I hope that everybody's, I'll soon find out when I go to play it back how it goes. Don't you, did you just sort of, don't you just turning it on? Oh, sorry, Darren, I missed what you mean there.
The computer, Robbo.
Oh, yeah, sometimes that works. And to answer your question, Rick, customer came, customer was happy. He actually even loved seeing how they were made. So I sent him a link to the video. Yeah, I do agree with you there, Mark. I have no idea what a touch portal is, but I think it changes the cameras over, if I remember rightly. What I would really like is remote zooms and things, but how far do you go? I've been watching you and Wayne and Steve using your touch portals, and I thought, yeah, that'd be very handy. I've got a manual switcher here. I know they're sort of manual too, but you know, yeah, I showed his wife and all his kids and said, look, that is exactly right, Pete. What you said, they're actually sharpening is not as hard as it is made out to be. Get the right kit that works for you and keep doing exactly almost the same thing each time you use it. And as you say, it doesn't matter whether it's cut with 44, 45, 30, as long as I said before, if the edge is sharp, it cuts. Simple as that. The biggest problem that I've found over teaching for the last 30 years is that, and this is going to sound terrible, but there's been an influx of a lot of people that have never used hand tools or even used a drill, let alone done turning, and they have no idea of how to use the tools. So, yes, Rob, I did a finial last week, but I was 8 feet long, 6 feet long. Yeah, actually, the bloke that does my computers for me, Justin, is he does the same thing. Sets up churches and funeral homes, believe it or not. Yeah, it's sorted out, Rick. He agreed that another 20 mil on the bottom there would look much better. And as around the other side of the house, they didn't have to match the one that was out the front. So, yeah, I have to agree with you there, Darren. That, like, join a club, find out who the people are that know what they're talking about, because there's quite a lot in there that don't in some clubs. And a good mentor or teacher is worth its weight in gold. And boy, I'm banging on the weight, so look out, Darren.
Yeah. Ricky, I think you might have missed the answer to the question there. Yes, that was where Robbo was talking about the customer came in and had a look and liked seeing how it was made.
Oh, yeah. No, I told yeah, I think Rick was referring to the fact that I couldn't do the bottoms of them because I reckoned I didn't look right.
Yes.
Yeah, I must admit, Justin, I worry about some of the new ones that come into the board too. Whereabouts are you, Dion? Oh, you've been told, Amy, that I yell a lot, you know. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Up on the Gold Coast. Look, the best club I can recommend, whereabouts on the Gold Coast. If you're any near Mudgee Bar, the Gold Coast Woodturners are really, really good. And they actually run a beginner's course, and I can highly recommend that because I helped set it up for them. Yeah, I'm in the same position, Darren, with, well, no, I've got Meniere's disease as well, and it's eating out one ear and it's working on the other one at the moment. Yeah, I know you've seen online Jay's live, yeah.
Rob, I'm just going to put the link to the Gold Coast Woodturners in the chat.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yep. Now, it's hard to get hold of them sometimes, particularly at the moment, but if you keep trying, you'll eventually get somebody at the club rooms, I would say. It's a pity Neil's not in because he knows the president's phone number as well. Yeah, I saw that, Rick. it's actually, and Jay won't mind me talking about this, but it's been a real learning curve for me having to teach somebody over the internet, because you can't just grab the, and you'll know what I'm talking about, Pete. You just can't grab the chisel and say, no, just turn it a little bit this way, and suddenly it's there, you know. Oh yeah, good, right. No worries, Dion. That's the best thing you do. Yeah, that's exactly right, Mike. They don't realise that the tool rest is the only movable part on the whole lathe once you start. And it's got to be adjusted for your own height, the height of the lathe, the diameter of the timber, the thickness of the tool, and everything else.
See you, Amy.
Yeah, see you later, Amy.
See you, Amy.
That might be one for one of your future lives, Robbo, is tool rest setup.
Yeah, well, I've actually covered it in another video. One of the one of the skew chisel ones, I've actually covered it in there. Yeah, that's the whole point. Pete, about the cameras. You can't, like, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but it took me ages to do the skew chisel one that I did, 12 episodes or whatever it was, because I had to keep moving the cameras to make sure that people could see exactly what I was on about.
Hey, SK.
Ah, good day, Steve. How are you? Don't worry, I'm not running into yours. Like I said in one of the lives one day, Tommy, if you can do spindle turning, you can do bowls standing on your head with your hand behind your back. Because you know how the chisels work and why they work. Oh, this is what I look like, Steve. Horrible looking fella, eh? Look like Ned Kelly at the moment. Yeah, has anybody logged in over there yet to beat Colin?
I better go.
Yeah, Tim Yoda's not bad, actually. There are quite a few reasonably good ones. Yeah, that's exactly right, Pete. The first two
right, job's done, Robbo.
Sorry?
Job's done. I've been in and said hello, Colin.
I'll see you later, Philip. Thank you for coming in. That's the whole thing, Pete. After I've done the first two, my brain goes into neutral, and then the hands just do the work. And I generally can't worry about what I'm going to be doing on the next job or working it out. Oh, thank you, Tommy. I'm glad I was some help there. Yeah, I sort of can't get across there at the moment, so I'll have to wait. Steve, I love your setup. I wish I could get mine like that, I'll tell you, but unfortunately our internet probably wouldn't handle the pace. I'm not sure, Dion. I don't know. Look, Neil Sensei might be able to help you if you get in contact with him. I think he's been in contact with you before. Yeah, no, I can't click on the links from here. No, there's only one. There's two major places there. I don't know that southeast Queensland, Dave Drescher might have a clue if you ask him, or if you ring the bloke down at Currumbin, Gary Pye. Yeah, good night, Steve. Don't work too hard. See, we have our fair share of Steves in this one as well. You haven't quite worked out how to do that, Darren, and get the picture in picture one. Just out of interest, SK Craft, Steve, how many cameras have you actually got set up now? I know you said you had 3 or 4 the last time you I PM'd you about what you were using. Oh, right. Yeah, I must admit, I only run through StreamYard, so yeah, that's right, Rick. After tomorrow, I might have. Geez, they're gonna break out the shearers, I reckon. There'll be queues outside the barbers in Melbourne tomorrow. Geez, you won't be able to move in that workshop soon for cameras. You'll be recorded wherever you go. Yeah, I'll see you later, Leo. Thanks for coming in. Hope to see you next week. Yeah, that's our problem here. 1080 would, as its name suggests in Australia, it would be absolute poison to my system.
See you, Robocop.
Yeah, see you later, Rob. Well, I might call it a night, go and make myself a cup of tea. No, Mike. Well, I don't use micro tools for doing small turning. I just use my the normal tools for pretty well everything. Yeah, see you later, Dion. Hope you find somebody up there. Yeah, I know that, Steve, that it knocks it back to 720. Yeah, good night, Justin. Sleep well. Oh, very nice. Mark? Yeah, see you later, Pat. Thanks, Darren. I'll catch you in Steve's one next. See you later, Soren. All right, gentlemen. Thank you for your time tonight. And ladies that are still on the side there somewhere. And I'll see you in, probably see most of you in Steve's live. So, good night. Take it easy. Keep safe. Look after each other.
See you later.
See you, Steve. See you soon.